Hey there, I'm Boone Langston, and this is my build. I call it Helm's Keep. It's kind of a play on words for a Tolkien reference, Helm's Deep, but it's not deep, so I changed it to Keep, and it's in a tree, so I went looking for a deciduous tree that I could name it after, so I went with Elm. It's got 3 towers. These, interestingly enough, if you saw, I was in a commercial during LEGO Masters Season 2 that was for Space Jam, and the Space Jam backboard that I built had this color scheme, and I built 2, and they blew 1 up, and there was a backup, and they were happy with the first explosion, so they didn't blow the second one up, so I actually took it apart and used the bricks to build this castle. I started building just a little over a week ago. I built this in a week, and then I packed it up to bring to this show, so this is the first time I've shown it. We've got a king and a queen there, and a princess that is creeping out of that back tower there. Got a lot of different things going on here. There is, that's a cool like Knights Kingdom 2 shield that I found at a local Lego reseller. Got all kinds of bricks and got all kinds of minifigs around this build. Most of them are the kind of redo of Black Falcons, because I was able to get those. You know, they're coming out with the blacksmith and the 3-in-1 castle, so they're fairly easy to come by right now. A few things that I guess I'll get into kind of some technical stuff. Each tower has 1 Technic motor at the bottom, so there's 3 motors. They are all tied into a train controller back here, and so they all rotate at the same speed and just have 1 shaft that runs up each of the towers, and then all of the moving functions that you see kind of go off of that. And you know, you can see like the windmill here and this little wheel that goes around with the chain. Those are just pretty simple, a 90-degree, 2 gears that make a 90-degree angle. Probably the most complex is this up here, where the flags move back and forth. So that shaft comes up here and spins, and then it's converted to 90-degree, and then that is a small gear to the largest normal Technic gear with 40 teeth. And then those just kind of it works like a bicycle, the way you would think a bicycle gear would work, and that makes those flags go back and forth. But the one that is actually the simplest, because it doesn't even include any gears, is this forestman guy that swings back and forth. But this is the function that I've been asked about more this weekend than any of the other functions, because people can't figure it out for some reason, and it's just that shaft that runs up the center, and you can see the movement here. And if you watch this little thing moving around, you'll see every time it comes to my finger, that's about the same time that the guy's going to move. It's like the same rotation. And so there's just a similar finger inside there coming around and ticking a little arm on here, and it just makes him swing. But for one reason or another, and I way overthought that. I thought about that for like 30 minutes before I'm like, no, these are making this way too complicated. And I guess something about that has puzzled people here. And it's kind of like Disneyland. I know you guys love Disneyland.
You know it.
But one of my favorite things about places like Disneyland is when they can show me something that I can't figure out. And so I'm very pleased that I was able to do something very simple that intrigued people this weekend.
And it includes the Forestmen, which is always cool.
Yeah, when I first did it, I had one of the Black Falcons on there, and I'm like, this seems like, once I saw it, I'm like, this seems like someone trying to break in. And I'm like, so it's got to be like the Forestmen, because this is like a castle in a tree, which almost seems to me like maybe this castle moved into the Forestmen's place, and they're gentrifying the forest, if you will. And now the Forestmen are coming back to try to infiltrate the castle. Some of my favorite hidden tidbits in this build are we've got a bunny down here, and we've got kind of a little army of guys that are coming to attack the bunny. And, that to me is kind of a reference to Monty Python and the Holy Grail. If you come around the side of the tree here, you see Boone. That's me in Black Falcon's gear, and Mark as a centaur. So we're just kind of checking that out. Maybe we're going to come defend the bunny, or maybe we want to try to get the bunny too. I've got a couple of what are these guys like? You've been there, right?
Like the London's Queen's Guard type guys.
Yeah. These are like Buckingham Palace guys. I came across those guys on Bricklink, and they were way too expensive. But when I saw them, I'm like, I just think it'd be hilarious to have like some palace guards at the gate of this. What else? Oh, we've got an Ewok over here. That's kind of a throwback to our Ewok Adventureland. If you haven't seen that Beyond the Brick video, check it out. But I figured since it's a forest tree, it would be fitting to have one little Ewok reference in there. And then let's see, we got a little Jester. I forgot to mention him earlier. That's not really hidden, but he's coming out there. And I thought it was like the princess is sort of coming out of the door of that one in like a am I allowed to come out of the castle way, you know? And the Jester is coming out like peeking out like he's gonna be up to something, right? So yeah, and then I don't know, we've got like a dwarf down here. And this is probably the oldest figure. Sorry, John, I know you're moving the camera around a lot. That's probably one of the oldest figures. I've found that at a place near my house. But yeah.
Have you done much castle building in the past, or was this kind of a new experience for you?
This is my third castle. I built one. I wish I'd brought it. I built one castle on an 8 by 16. No, 16 by 32. I built my first castle on a 16 by 32 when I was probably 8 or 10 years old. And I still have that. And then my second castle ever, because I went almost 30 years without building a castle. And my second castle ever was sitting right next to it here, was the Castello Fortificato. This is an alternate build to the Lego Colosseum. So if you have the Lego Colosseum set or you want to collect these pieces, you actually can go to boonebuilds.com. And if you want to get even more specific, boonebuilds.com/instructions, and you can buy the instructions for this set. And I built that about 6 months ago. So that was my second castle. So now Elm's Keep is the third castle I've ever built in my life. And I guess the other thing I'll say is I had so many of these 2x4 bricks in these three kind of light blue and one a little bit purplish colors.
Not your normal castle colors.
No, it really wasn't. I just had so many that I was like, I've got to come up with a geometry where I can use predominantly these 2x4 bricks. And I've done that here, and pretty much the only exception is this 1x1 in teal, which I've used to fill in that gap a little bit. And there's still a little bit of a gap, but I'm like, it's Lego, it's castle. I don't mind that gap. But I filled that gap with a 1x1 brick that I got off the pick-a-brick wall. And yeah.
So if you look here at the connections, you've got some of the arms from the trees that kind of stick out, holding up the towers a little bit. But I imagine there's a lot of weight there. Was it difficult to get that all holding up steadily so that nothing was falling over?
Yeah. There is, I'll start with the base of the tree. Inside the center of the base of the tree is a giant block of brick that's just, overlapped and interlocking. And then the outside of that block is sort of like flanked with, Technic bricks that are turned up on their side. So then you can see that the bark of the tree is built out from, kind of a snot style out from those Technic bricks. And then all of that Technic is tied into more Technic. I built these big kind of Technic beams that are like, 2 bricks together, and they're tied together with pins, and then a couple of plates, and then another 2 bricks tied together. And that creates 4 branches. The 3 main ones are the ones that the towers are built on, and then there's a small one up here. And those are just all Technic kind of beams that are built and tied together. And then literally these towers are just brick built on top of those. And then it's this bridge that goes across that is what connects them together and keeps them all from like falling outward, if that makes sense. And I had to drive here. It ended up being about a 13-and-a-half-hour drive from Portland to Sandy, Utah. When it got here, it seemed like it was really leaning, and we weren't sure what was going on because I couldn't identify like any major disconnections, but it was really hot in here during load-in. And then after they turned the AC on, it seemed like it kind of firmed up. And it still does. It has some, you can see it has some wobble there, some flex. I think in some ways that helps me, right? Because nothing's breaking. It's flexing a little bit. But but I think the heat was causing this thing to be more flexible than I wanted it to be. But anyway, yeah.
It was very hot during setup, so.
Yeah, it was. And this was actually the very first build. This is the first large build that I've done that I've taken out of state. So this is the first time I built. I finished this thing early enough in the process. You know, usually I'm like finishing my builds in Portland like early in the morning before taking them to the convention, and I just sort of like gingerly try to put them in the car and get them there. But this was the first build that I've ever had to drive, 13 hours away. So I built a wooden box for it, and I filled it with packing peanuts, and I was really pleased at how well it fared, driving 14 hours away.
Yeah, I love this so much. It's a very whimsical, colorful take on the traditional kind of castle challenge here, build up in the tree with all of these bright bricks. So the question is, can we expect more castle medieval builds from you in the future?
Yeah, I'm kind of on a castle kick right now, I guess. And I will comment, you mentioned the challenge. This is built on a 48 by 48, but I wanted to go big. And so I'm like, it's going to be as tall as I can possibly make it. But then I was thinking it's just going to be this big skinny thing. I was like, well, what if I branch out beyond, make the base 48 by 48, but then branch out beyond the 48 by 48. And that led me to the idea to put it in a tree. But the next idea, I hesitate to even say it, but I'll say it out loud because if I don't get around to doing it, then maybe someone else will. I want to build a castle out of Bionicle. Have you ever seen a Bionicle castle?
Oh, that's a good question. Nothing immediately jumps to mind. I feel like it's probably been done, but I can't think of anything off the top of my head.
So my fourth castle, I've literally just started collecting Bionicle pieces, and I didn't know what I was collecting them for when I started, but now I have some Bionicle pieces to start playing around with, and so maybe Boone's castle number 4 will be a Bionicle castle.
That is very exciting. We'll look forward to that. But for anyone who hasn't seen your work before we let you go, where can they find more of your stuff online, Boone?
Yeah, Boone Builds anywhere. BooneBuilds.com, YouTube.com/Boone Builds. You can find me on Facebook under Boone Builds. You can email me at boone@boonebuilds.com.
He's everywhere, folks.
Thank you very much.
Keep up the great work. Thanks.
Thanks, Joshua.